please help me give a warm welcome to our Lancaster Mayor, the Honorable R. Rex Parris.
Good afternoon. I'm going to jump right into it so that we have plenty of time for questions. I'd like to talk a little bit about where we started, where we are, where we want to be. I think that everyone in this room would agree that 5 years ago, if we were to discuss the trajectory that Lancaster was on, this would be it. I mean, is there any other way to describe what was happening to us? We were in a nosedive. And quite frankly, I didn't know if we were going to recover or not. The first speech that I gave was at a United Way event, and it was right after the economic collapse. Some of you might have been there. And everybody's talking about how we're just going to jump back. Everything's going to be wonderful. Look at all we have going for us. And that's really what people were saying. And I stood up and said, what if we don't? What happens if we don't? And in many ways, we have not. Economically, the country is doing better on Wall Street, but the employment in this country has not rebounded. And it certainly has not rebounded in the city of Lancaster. It went from 19% unemployment, it's now 14%. But those are deplorable numbers. I mean, when you put that in real terms, that's thousands of families, thousands of them, that are essentially totally dependent on public assistance. I've been on public assistance, and believe me, growing up on that is not a pleasant experience. And I haven't seen anything to say that that has changed. So we got a lot of work ahead of us. To thrive together as a community, we have a lot of work. And I want to talk to you a little bit about that. And fortunately, look what I have to do it with. This is an incredible council. Every one of these people work. They work every single day at making this a better city, a better place to raise our families, and a better place to start our businesses. And you notice I've added the deputy mayors to that. And the reason I've done that is because one of the things I've recognized is that we really do need diversity in our leadership. Because what was occurring was we all had the same view, and we were all bouncing the same ideas off of each other. And nobody was stopping to say, we might be wrong. We might be able to do it a little better. Or maybe the message that I was sending out there was not as pleasant as it could be. They still say that. But I'm working on it. But oftentimes the message is what it is. And, you know, it's not for me to put a spin on it. But because of that council, guess what we're doing now? We're running with the big dogs. And believe me, it is a lot more fun with the big dogs than it is with the little dogs. Examples of that are Ken Mann. Where's Ken? What? Okay, you're going to have to give that speech then because you were there. You know, Ken and Rosemary actually went to Vienna, wasn't it? To get the international award for what we're doing in this city for the environment. In a little bit, we'll talk about why I think that's important that we do that. This is Marvin in Washington, D.C. I didn't know you took Jason and staff with you, Marvin, till this morning when I looked at the picture. This is the award for sustainable cities. We beat out San Francisco, we beat out New York, we beat out Chicago. Who else did we beat out? We beat them all, right? Atlanta. Cities with huge budgets. And we did it with one 100th the money. We kind of felt like the Oakland A's that year, in Moneyball, when they beat everybody. And we did it the same way. We did it with our brains instead of our wallets. And what's happening now in Lancaster environmentally and on a sustainable cities front has really become a model for the world. And what's interesting is because we live here, we tend not to recognize it. We tend not to capture in our own imagination what's occurring. When Pat Nelson goes to work, he just goes to work. He forgets that what the sheriff's department is doing in Lancaster is world changing. Nobody else is doing what they're doing right here in Lancaster. And it's starting to infect the entire community. All of us are starting to look like we could run with the big dogs too. All it takes is the decision to do so and to recognize we really can compete on an international level in just about everything. I was hoping, I actually prayed a little bit. And then I realized that, God probably doesn't appreciate those prayers because they tend to be self-aggrandizing in a way. But we have spent a lot of time going to other countries, a lot of money. Now, the money was not taxpayer money, but nonetheless, a huge investment going to other countries, trying to get foreign investment into this city. And I thought I was going to be able to announce it today. When am I going to be able to announce it? I'm looking at you, Vern. The second I can. But what's interesting is the reason that I can't announce it today is because there are international players that want some credit, which means they have to be at the announcement. Well, that's really hard to coordinate schedules like that. And then the question is, what city do we do it in? Do we do it in Lancaster? Do we do it in some foreign land? All of those are decisions they don't let me make because we'd do it today, right here now, and if they were here, fine. If not, too bad. But they're not letting me do that. But we're this close. And when that happens, that 14% is going to drop like a stone. Finally, we will be able to put our people back to work. And I actually envision a day that if you live in Lancaster and you want a job, you will have one. And not a minimum wage job. These are going to be high-paying, high-skilled jobs. It took 3 years longer than I thought, but if God has ever smiled on a city, it is us. And we do that by willing to reach across literally oceans and recognize that people are much different than us, and that's okay. They are welcome in this city. And we have to remember that because you are the business leaders of this community. When they come into your businesses, they have to feel welcome. The moment that breaks down, they will find a place where they are. We want to start thinking about that. How do we open our arms to an international market? Because they're willing to open their arms to us. And the one thing we've learned is we really can do this. There is nothing this city can't accomplish. Nothing. That used to be just words that they told us in school, to motivate us. But what I've seen this city staff do is beyond comprehension to me. Robert Neal over there knows more about the public works of a city than anybody alive. And even the way we fix our potholes, although I've been getting a lot of calls lately, is totally innovative, totally creative. And one of the reasons it's so slow is we're still bringing the equipment in to do it. Isn't that accurate? If there's anything this city does well, and what the city staff does, and what you do, is we are facilitating partnerships. And that word is so overused. But in this city, it really means something. You know, we're putting foreign companies together with American companies to create things that were only dreamed of literally months before. You know, that KB home that produces more electricity than it uses, that is world changing. And as soon as the Underwriters Laboratory approves those batteries, you're going to see them in a lot of homes. I mean, we're way ahead of the curve. We've taken the science, we've established its use even before it's approved. That, to me, is an exciting place to be. One of the reasons we're able to do that is because of what our educators have done. These foreign companies are going to be coming to Lancaster. And one of the reasons they're coming is they have been here, they've explored it. Ask Dawn and Amber over there, who was in ILEAD school 2 weeks ago. It was the wife of the equivalent of our Secretary of State from China. I mean, imagine Hillary Clinton showing up if you're in a foreign country, because that's who showed up in their school. You wouldn't have known it, would you? I mean, she just, you know, we didn't really get an inkling of who she was until we saw that huge helicopter pick her up. You know? We hadn't quite seen that before, had we, Mark? One of the guys who was actually dressed more casually than I am was introduced to me. He's the CEO of the largest electric car manufacturer in China. And he's here in Lancaster. And he's here for a reason, because of the jobs they're going to bring here. A lot of reasons internationally why that's occurring. A lot of reasons in China why that's occurring. The economic situation in China right now is very unstable. And they recognize they have to establish American markets for their brands. You know, right now we have a lot of Chinese products, but we think it's American. Eveready, they haven't made an Eveready battery in America in I don't know how long. All of that's made by BYD. But they're recognizing that they have to start producing it in America to sell to Americans, to establish that brand. And right now, we're the focus of where they want to come. We're seeing the beginnings of industrial development, healthcare. I mean, for Kaiser to actually build the facility they're building here, I mean, for sick people not to have to go to Panorama City, what a gift. What a gift. I couldn't imagine being pregnant, getting ready to deliver, and racing to Panorama City. How is that possible? That'd be awful. All of that's going to change. I just thought I'd give you a little hint of maybe of what's coming. Another thing we're getting ready to do is we may be the next Silicon Valley. Silicon Valley. I know how fantastic that sounds, but it's really a possibility. The things that are in play right now are absolutely mind-boggling. And if you guys aren't involved with what this city is doing, you are missing an e-ride. How many of you know what an e-ride is? For you younger people, when you went to Disneyland, you didn't get a little bracelet. You got a ticket book. And in the ticket book, there were A through E tickets. And you only got 2 e-tickets because those were the best rides. And we call them e-rides. Right now, you have a free e-ticket waiting for you. You just got to come down to the city and pick it up. And it's going to be an e-ride that you could not imagine. At least it's been for us. Marvin, you agree with that? Did you even expect it was going to be this cool? I didn't. But there's some worries, and they're global worries that we should think about. You know, right now, the 2 biggest threats facing the world are obviously global warming, but the threat that's bigger than that is bacterial. Not viral, bacterial. 6 years ago, there were no reported cases of certain bacteria which is now uncontrollable and has a 50% mortality rate. That is a higher mortality rate than smallpox. 50%. This year, 4% of the hospitals in America have reported it. Unfortunately, these are not linear progressions. They're nonlinear, meaning 4% could become 40% tomorrow. And the problem is we carry that bacteria in our stomach. It is all around us. But the drugs that we used to rely on to kill it are now no longer working. And you combine that with global warming. We are facing, it's not a maybe. It's not, it might happen. It is going to happen. We are going to have massive disruptions of populations. Massive. Bangladesh is going to disappear. Think about that. There are millions and millions of people in Bangladesh. Back in the 70s, when Deng Xiaoping was coming over to the US and trying to reestablish ties with the US, one of the things was it the Reagan administration or Carter? Whoever was there then. One of the things they raised was human rights and immigration, not letting their people leave the country. And so Deng Xiaoping said, oh, I can fix that. How many do you want? 15, 20, 30 million? It was never raised again. How do you accommodate 15 million people? You can't. You just can't. That's the magnitude of this. These people within our children's lifetime, maybe our lifetime, certainly within 50 years, we're going to see millions and millions of people without any money, any resources, trying to get into other countries. And nobody's going to want to take them. The health consequences of that are going to take what is world-threatening now and make it exponential. And our response to that is let's not think about it, right? Anybody have a different response? Let's not talk about it. Why don't we say it's not going to happen? That's what the Washington people have said for 10 years now. Finally, they've quit saying it. When this year it came out, we cannot hold the temperature change to 2 degrees. It will be worse than that. They quit saying that. Everybody now agrees. In 50 years, could be 20, could be 30, could be 40. But within that time frame, all of this is going to happen. So what do we do about it? What I'm not going to do is wait. As long as I'm mayor of this city, I'm not going to rely on somebody else to fix it. It's been my experience growing up, whenever I expected somebody else to fix something, they never did. They said they would, but rarely did they. We have to be self-reliant. And so I think we figured out a way to at least mitigate a lot of this. Those wellness homes we have in the neighborhoods, those neighborhood impact homes we have, they're doing a lot of good. The crime rate in the neighborhoods with impact homes is much lower than the crime rate without them. Pat Nelson will tell you that in some of those neighborhoods, the burglar prays the sheriffs to get there. Isn't that right? People are now protecting their neighborhoods. You're having that community oneness that is starting to generate. There's a book I read not too long ago. How many read The Black Swan or heard of The Black Swan? Black Swan events are those events that are huge and totally unexpected. If, we take a cup and we drop it 50 times, nothing really happens. Throw it up, what happens? When it's 50 times faster, it breaks. Mark, I guess we have to pay for the cup. Excuse me. We know these black swan events are coming. We kind of knew the housing bust was going to come, didn't we? Was there anybody here who didn't say, people can't afford those houses? You said that, didn't you? Yeah, there's no way they can afford these houses. It's got to collapse. And then we went and bought another house. You know? I'm assuming we did not, but I know that I wanted to. I wanted to get into that. And my wife kept saying, are you nuts? How does the average person pay $400,000 for a house? Guess what? She was right. They can't, and they don't. That was a black swan event. It was so humongous that companies crumbled, nations crumbled. You know, Greece is yet to recover. Ireland has yet to recover. Maybe be another 50 years before they do. Black swan events. The guy who wrote The Black Swan wrote another book. It's called Anti-Fragile. We have to prepare for the black swan. And as a city, we have to do that. And that's why we have those wellness homes, the impact homes. We now have a distribution network. I can call Berna over at the hospital and say, Berna, we need to fix it today. And in today, we now have the ability to go to everybody's door. One of the things we're working on is, it's called Asthmopolis. You know, a huge expense to the hospital is asthma patients, kids who have asthma attacks. How many have seen an asthma attack? It's terrifying, isn't it? I couldn't imagine that happening to one of my children. And it happens to children over and over and over again. We now have the technology to have them blow in this little device, and it's sent over the internet, the analysis of the gas that they blow into it, sent over the internet, and we can predict that 3 days in advance. 3 days in advance. It's that good. We're working with the hospital, one of those partnerships we were talking about, to now notify the parent. And it's very difficult. We're talking 156,000 people, right? A lot of those kids have asthma. How do we notify the parents within 24 hours? What if the parent doesn't pick up the phone? Do we let the kid just have the asthma attack? No, we got to go knock on their door. We got to intervene whether it's easy or not. And so we're working up that system to be able to do that. We are going to be the most medically advanced preventative care city in the nation, all because of those homes, and all because we want to do it. And we have a community that's willing to invest in doing it, because they understand it's an e-ride. It's an amazing experience to be involved in things that are world-changing. And it's an amazing experience to have hundreds of kids not go through that terror just because we decided they shouldn't. And it's not going to cost. I mean, we're going to be able to, with grants and contributions and private funding, I don't see any city money going into this. Where's Vern? We got anything budgeted for it? Imagine that. We're going to stop asthma attacks in this city and not spend any money doing it. That's unbelievable, isn't it? A lot of you don't believe me. There's things we need to fix. There is no reason in the world this is not a fiber optic city. None whatsoever, other than Verizon and AT&T don't want us to be. That's the only reason. If we as a chamber and as a city started raising a little bit of hell about it, we would be a fiber optic city. Every one of those houses that we build should have fiber optics in them, because the cities with fiber optics are going to be your intellectual capitals, because the broadband is becoming so congested that all of our education is pretty much going to be based. Where's Bridget? Isn't that the expectation? That it's going to be a combination of internet and classrooms. That's really the only way we're going to be able to provide education because of the expense. It's insane that children get out, well, they're adults when they get out. You get out of college owing $200,000. Most of my lawyers owe $200,000 when they graduate, or more. And there's no reason for it. Because of the internet, it should be almost free. And Coursera, how many have looked at Coursera on the internet? Oh my gosh, you got to do this. If you get nothing else from me, type in Coursera. Greatest professors in the world, and it's free. And you get certificates. And if you want the certificate that you can use for employment or whatever reasons, it's $45. Beats the heck out of the what does it cost now? I think it's $40,000 to go to a top tier school, maybe more. $45. You have the certificate. Same class, same coursework. Actually, they break it down into 10 and 15-minute segments. It's unbelievable. I have been blessed with an incredible group of courageous people that are willing to stand up and make decisions that are just intelligent, regardless of who doesn't want them to. Most people want to stay where they are. It's safe. Don't try anything new. Don't make it mandatory to put solar panels on houses. That changes the field. It changes the economic climate. They have to take a lot of heat when they do things like that. And some of them, one in particular, has higher political aspirations. Safest thing for her to do is to do nothing. Vote no on any change, right? I mean, she's got to raise a lot of money. How does she do that if she's going to be scaring developers? She scares them anyway. She scares them anyway. You've all heard about the diversity case, and we can talk about that if you want. But I want to tell you why that is so important. All of the studies coming back, and it really is just science. The more diverse you can make the decision-making group, the better the decision, the stronger the decision, the more likely you are to succeed. And that is the main reason why I think we have to improve the diversity of all of our group making where the decisions are being made. It is just good business. And you can deal with all the social issues you want. That's not why I'm doing it. I'm doing it because I know that those are the groups that will make us thrive, and for no other reason. Sure, it's nice. It's nice to think of it as a social cause, but I would not sacrifice the ability to thrive for it, and I don't think anybody here would. We need to do it if we're going to be in that top 1% of the world. And that's simply where I've always striven to be. It's the way I keep score, is if I'm doing something, how long is it going to take me to get to that top 1%? And I think that should be the goal of this city, is if we measure all of the things that go into a city that thrives, how long before we're the top 1%? Isn't any doubt in my mind we can get there. All we have to do is decide that's what we're going to do. And this is one of the ways we do it. And when we do that, we will soar. It's just as easy as deciding we're going to do it. And I think all of you know that now. Anybody have any doubts about that? 4 or 5 years ago, I could not have given this speech with any degree of credibility. No one would have believed it. Now you can see it. Now we're starting to believe it. It's now time to get on the ride because we can no longer do it without you. You have to be on it. And believe me, it's a lot more fun than running with the little dogs. But it does require us to do it together. And with that, I will answer any question you have. Be careful what you ask, because you will get an answer.
There's been a lot of media about the lawsuit against Palmdale, And my question is, as mayor of Palmdale, how can you justify participating in a lawsuit against the city of Palmdale?
No, Mayor of Lancaster.
Especially since the lawsuit could result in Palmdale going to vote by district, and your own city doesn't have that same process.
There are 3 questions there. Let me break it down. First question is, how do I justify as mayor of Lancaster being involved? How many think that's not a good idea? Come on. Is there anybody here? My wife didn't think it was a very good idea. There's a multifaceted answer to that. It's a complex issue. One is I am a lawyer. That's what I do for a living. That's what puts meat on the table. I have 80 employees, and we had to give up a lot of income for me to be mayor of Lancaster. I mean, we used to sue the city of Lancaster regularly. We did. But it certainly would be a conflict for me to do it now. It is not a conflict for me to do it with the city of Palmdale. But then the question does come, is that somehow injuring Lancaster? Because I am the mayor. I can't separate myself from that. You know how many times Palmdale has sued us in the past 2 years? I mean, it's not like we're friends. And I'm not saying it's a tit-for-tat situation. I'm just saying I didn't see a downside. You know, we are involved in very aggressive litigation with the city of Palmdale. I just didn't see a downside. But most importantly, what I do as a lawyer is I ask questions. And I've learned how to ask them for 30 years. But the questions have never hurt anyone. It's the answers. It's the string of the answers that spins the rope that hangs people. The answers coming out of that lawsuit are horrifying. You don't need me to tell you what they are. Go on the internet and read them. This is the Antelope Valley. It's not just Lancaster. The quality of our leadership we should pay more attention to. We really should. I see a whole community that is thriving. I do not see the status quo. If I thought for 1 second I was just going to preserve things the way they were, I never would have ran. It would not have been my interest. What was the other part of that question? That's correct. I personally think we should be districted, that we should have districts. But I don't get to make decisions. I just get to tell people what I think, and then the council decides. There are very good reasons not to have districts. One is, do you balkanize the city? You know, do we now have people that just vote for their district, and then we wouldn't have Lancaster Boulevard? And I think Lancaster Boulevard is critical to us thriving. I can see reasons not to do it, but I think the reasons for doing it outweigh them. And it's a California Voter Rights Act case, and what they look at is, are the members of the community represented on the council? Since, in the last 5 years, we went from 5 planning commissioners to now 60 commissioners. And I think those commissioners absolutely represent the makeup of this community, both demographically, both economically, philosophically, religiously. I mean, I've made an attempt to cast the net as wide as the city is. And those commissions actually make decisions that we follow. It is a rare day that we overrule one of them or override what they ask us to do. The people on those commissions have very real power to shape this community the way they want to. So do we gain much by going to districts? I don't know. I think that from an appearance point of view, we probably should. But they are totally different cities. in that regard. Anyone else? Did I answer all your questions? Okay, thank you.
I have
Yes.
a question, Mayor. What do you see the biggest obstacles us facing as a city in becoming more successful?
I think the biggest obstacle of every city is the quality of the leadership. You know, I don't think we pay enough attention to it. You know, I think there's two ways to get there. Are you successful in a business? And I mean really successful in a business. I mean, where's your K1s? You know, can you show us that you've successfully created a business? Or are you highly educated? Because you need that education. When I'm doing a paper now with one of the, he's actually a party secretary in China, about the comparative educations of different municipal governments between China and the US. I mean, remember 45 years ago, China was in the Stone Age, literally. Literally in the Stone Age. The bathrooms in a home were a hole, literally a hole. You couldn't imagine how backwards that country was after Mao. And in 50 years, 45 years, look where they came. Why? There's a lot of countries with cheap labor. India, Brazil, a lot of countries with cheap labor. That wasn't it. They have a 2,000-year tradition of, in order to get into government, you have to be highly educated. The person who meets me at the airport and picks up my bag is the low rung of government. You know, it's an intern, equivalent of our intern. He's got a master's or a PhD. That's what it takes to get in. That's the price of entry, is to have that level of knowledge. I think we should require that of our leaders. I don't mean by law. I mean as a community. How is this person qualified? It's an easy question. And it's not that they have an internet business and sold 2 pieces of art or crafts or something like that and got a business license. Because that's what we're letting people get away with. We really are. That they have this business. Well, where's the investigative journalism? You know, let me see it. Where's your K1s? Have you proven ability to lead us? Can you read a balance sheet? Can you do a predictive analysis about anything? You know, and what I'm finding is the people with those skills get pushed out. You know, Laura Bettencourt, incredibly bright woman. She's not running. You know, she was successfully pushed out. She knows how to do a predictive analysis of anything. You know, how do I know? Pat uses her. No. Okay. Anyone else? Yes.
Mayor, you teased us a little bit today about some of your trips overseas, but in regards to China, you spent a lot of time in China. You've had a lot of them over here, a lot of dialogue. Mm-hmm. What are your expectations? What do you think that we're really going to gain out of this?
Well, a lot depends on Congressman McCarthy, Congressman McKeon, the supervisor, the board of supervisors, a lot of people in play here. But what I see is 3 or 4% unemployment. That's what I see. And there's a lot of reasons for that. The cost of shipping is just going up, up, up. We are in an incredibly great place, for shipping reasons, in that you have the 58, which will be the truck route into California, because you can no longer bear the congestion down in LA. They're trying to remove it from there. If they ever build that inland port so that the ships unload in Long Beach and it just gets trained up here, which is, when I was in Abu Dhabi, they were willing to write the check. We couldn't get the people that could make the decision together to do it. I mean, it's not like it's not possible to do. What's the problem is political inertia is what's preventing a lot of it. But yeah, I see employment. The only way to deal with the volatility of tariffs is to manufacture here. That's coming. We're doing some amazing things with Air China that I think will come to fruition. I've never been more encouraged than when I saw that helicopter, because now I know they have every intention of coming, and they sent their top leadership to look at us. Oh, I think it's coming. You were there. You think it's coming? Okay. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
I spent 28 years in manufacturing, mostly high-tech electronics, aerospace. And in that 28 years, I saw us go from, I worked at Ampex Corporation, and we started sending circuit boards way back in the mid-'70s to Singapore. Then Juarez, Mexico became cheaper. Then when I started working in supply chain solutions, I ran a $900 million factory and watched everything go from Juarez, Mexico to the Philippines, Japan, and China. How much of this that you're speaking about today involves manufacturing? Because that, I don't think anybody would dispute, was the foundation of this country at one time. And I tell you, I haven't gone back into it for over 6 years because it's just disappearing.
Part of me agrees with the president when he says a lot of this isn't coming back. I think that's accurate. But I think a lot of it is. I'm confident we're going to see final assembly here. I'm absolutely confident of that. There is a globalization of the labor market occurring. You know, they have workers' comp lawyers in China now. I probably should have gone over there. Could have. I'm joking. But there's a globalization of labor costs that, for a lot of that, it makes more sense to do it here. We're going to see fuel costs, continue to skyrocket, although because of fracking, that may change. There's now a new wrinkle, so that may slow down a little bit. I think we're going to see a lot of final assembly. I don't think we're going to see circuit boards. It's going to be more of a balance.
Well, one of the reasons I asked is because in 2003, I was running a division of a Canadian-based company, Supply Chain Solutions. A huge company, and we saw Fujitsu figure out how to package, from receipt of order, package and deliver accessory kits for every known PC manufacturer on the planet within 7 days into the American market from the Asian market. And it's just, between the labor costs here, especially living wage, union wages, it just made it impossible to keep our factory in the Irvine Spectrum. Just impossible.
And I think we facilitated that from a government point of view.
Right.
We made it easier and easier and easier. And probably because corporate America, it was cheaper to produce overseas. It wasn't in the best interest of the people, but it was in the best interest of some corporate interests. Let's be honest, that couldn't have happened any other way. But why is that changing? It's changing because that also causes a volatility. A friend of mine was getting ready to import massive amounts of tires from China because they were cheaper, right? And it evaporated because of a tariff. One day Obama decided to have a tariff, and 2 years of work just evaporated. And that happens a lot with foreign manufacturing, especially China. That's why they need to come here. If they put the final assembly here, they don't have to worry about that. Tariffs don't apply. We're going to be able to take advantage of that. It's not magical. It's just, where is the most conducive place to do business on the West Coast? And what we've striven to do is make it Lancaster. Does that answer your question? Thank you. Yes, Fran.
On another note, at one time you mentioned something called the 50-year project. Could you tell us a little bit about that, and how's that coming along?
Slower than I had hoped, but it is coming. What I'm hoping to do is create a blueprint for it to be sustainable. And what I mean by that is that as we develop, as we grow, we have some basic principles we keep in mind, and that's walkability, bicycles, health, community connection. You know, there's just a lot of science now about how to build communities that we didn't know 20 years ago. We have known for 20 years and have done nothing about it. You know, the safety of a community improves dramatically if people walk. Why aren't they walking? Because there's something about our brains. We do not like to walk on straight sidewalks that are contiguous to a street. We know if we just separate it by 1.5 feet, 2 feet of green space, and then make it ribboned, you know, so it's not straight, people walk more. They're healthier. You know, I actually foresee a day when the biggest growth industry in Lancaster is not dialysis, because that's what it is today. You know, renal failure at the hospital. Verna, renal failure, isn't that your biggest growth industry over there? No, they take kidneys out at AV Hospital faster than anywhere. Not because they shouldn't, because that's how many sick people we have from diabetes. And you fix those things before they happen, not after. And remember, I was 306 pounds. I kind of know what I'm talking about in that regard. Also, if we change the way they build the house, if you just put the kitchen window of 30% of the houses facing the street, crime drops. You have eyes on the neighborhood now. Laura Bedencourt came up with that one. You know, incredibly bright people in this community that can add to lifting the whole place. Little changes. We call it positive deviance. Yes. Yes, sir.
I was just wondering, with your ear to the ground, you probably know more whether or not the high-speed rail is actually going to go through, and that's going to be a significant change to our landscape up here. And then at the same time, if it does wind up going through, will there be some way to maybe do something about the rail lines that go through that sometimes impede with, you know, transporting people back and forth, you know, maybe to the hospital or whatever, through some of the major arteries?
Well, certainly we're going to need more overpasses. I think if they build the high-speed rail, that's included in the construction and design. But the thing everybody's not paying attention to on that, and I'm not putting a value judgment on it, I'm just making an observation, is I have seen what happens to small cities in China when high-speed rail comes through. One day you have 40,000 people. Within 5 years, you have 800,000 people. We can expect a population explosion when that high-speed rail opens up. And I don't see the planning for that. I don't see the attention being focused on that. I'm not saying it's a good or bad thing. You know, there's incredible benefits to it. Certainly benefits to people who travel, obviously. You know, I'd much rather not have to drive down to Burbank and get on a plane. I mean, all of us would. Do those benefits outweigh? I don't think it matters. The decision has been made, and it is coming. It's just a question of when. But we better start planning, because everything changes when those gates open. Everything. And I'm just not seeing people pay attention to that. Next week, I'm going to a thing called Singularity University, which is put on by the .com companies up in the San Jose area. And I think it's 8 days. And it's all about what they expect to be happening in the future, technologically. You know, what we know is going to be here in just a couple short years. You know, do you like driving your car? Enjoy the heck out of it. Because in 5 years, you won't be. It'll drive you. You know, the Google car really does work. With today's technology, without putting a magnetic strip down the road or anything else, it drove 150,000 miles in North America without incident and without being touched by human hands. That was a year and a half ago. Now BMW has one. You know, The whole focus is these robotic cars. I'm a personal injury lawyer. My boys are in law school. They will not be personal injury lawyers. You know, and I mean, it's great for the world because we're not going to have all that mayhem. You know, we're not going to have the what we see every day. Traffic accidents will, for the most part, you know, be 1% of what they are today. But then that comes into play. We're building transportation devices without taking that into account. We could be planning better than we are. Is that who answered that? Yeah, does that answer everything? Great, thank you. Anyone else? Once again, I loved being here. Thank you. Once again, I'm imploring you, get more involved.